All right, hello everyone. So this is our last video for the week. I am doing the additional practice, week 13, which is putting together a calculator with different functions. And so I'm going to first write all my 4 functions to represent my 4 operations. So I'm going to say int add, and if I'm adding, it usually takes in 2 numbers. So I'll say int num1, int num2, and these are going to be really simple functions here, because if you think about it, I have really simple operations happening. So I want to return an int, which is the sum. So I'm going to return num1 plus num2. So then I'm going to write a function that is going to subtract. And so I'm going to say int subtract, and I also, once again, need to take in 2 parameters, 2 int parameters. So I'm going to separate my parameters with a comma here, and I'm going to return num1 minus num2. Now remember about scope. When we have scope, that means that where a variable can be seen. So my num1 and num2 are considered local variables to the function that I write it in. So that's the reason why I have an int num1 and an int num2. It only exists here in this function. So if I use it again, I have to once again declare it again in my list of parameters. So for multiplication, I'm going to return num1 times num2. And then for my last one, let me make it a little bit more relevant here. I'll say division, and I'll take in int num1 and int num2. Something we should always be thinking about if we're trying to divide 2 integers is, do we want an integer answer? Well, based on my return type, the answer is no, I don't want an integer answer. So I'm going to have to static cast, and I'm going to say I want to static cast to a double. And I'm converting num1 temporarily into a double, so that way I get a double answer. All right, so what I've done here is I have defined my 4 functions. Now I got to think about, in my main, how do I call them and when do I call them? So I'm going to go ahead and come up with x and y. So x and y is going to be my input. So I'm going to see out, I'm going to say enter a number, and my user is going to enter in a number that will be the variable x. Then I'm going to have enter another number, and I am going to see in y. All right, now at this point, I want to ask my user what their operation is. So I probably need some kind of thing to store that into. So I'm going to say char op, and I'm going to say enter an operation. And so their options are plus, minus, multiplication, or division. Oops. All right, and then I'm going to have them see in an operation. Now I could handle this one of 2 ways. The first way, in fact, let's do that because we haven't done a switch statement in a while. I'm going to say switch, and I am checking my operation here. So, whoops. Wrong language. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I am going to say case, and my case that I'm looking for is my plus sign. So in the case of a plus sign, what I want to do is I want to call on my adding, but I do need to print out the value. So I'm going to see out add, and I'm going to pass in my x and y. All right, I also need to break, otherwise it's going to, quote, bleed into my next case, which is subtraction. And in this case, I'm going to subtract x and y. And I got to remember to break. I'm going to have case multiplication. I'm going to see out multiply, and I'm going to pass in x and y, and I'm going to say break, and then I'm going to say case division. So I'm going to see out division, and I'm going to pass in x and y and an L, and I'm going to say break because I do want a default. My default is you entered an invalid operation. All right, so let's go ahead and run this to test. Okay, I'm going to enter in two numbers. I'm going to enter in a 9. I'm going to enter in a 5. And I need to enter in an operation. I'm going to enter in the plus sign just simply because I want to show that it doesn't bleed all the way through. And so I can see that it doesn't. It only gave me one answer, which is 14, which is 9 plus 5. So I can verify that that works. And I would probably want to verify that all 4 of my operations work, but I can tell you that right now that it does work. No problems here. And so that is the end of our additional practice for this week.